Hey there, I'm Eternal, and I'm an object show fan who's on a journey to know everything about object shows. Let's play Object Catchup. Hello and welcome into Object Catchup. This is where we discuss object show episodes right after watching them. Whether they're new or old, famous or unknown, it doesn't matter. We will get to it all. Now, for this episode, the idea is relatively simple. We're going to be taking a look at the two big releases from yesterday. Then we're going to be taking a look at a thing that I should have covered yesterday that I didn't have time for, and then whatever else we can muster up some time for. Probably not much, because the main topic of the day is obviously BFDIA 24, so about 2 in the morning yesterday. For me, BFDIA 24 released, which means I couldn't cover yesterday, and either way it wasn't the plan, so we're covering it for today's episode. Yeah, as a reminder for what happened last time was the biggest BFDI episode ever with 1 hour of length. It was the very last challenge, the culmination of all the previous challenges, callbacks everywhere, interesting scenes everywhere. Overall, I would say that it was a very, very strong episode, and Book managed to legendarily clutch up the challenge right at the end when Needle and Tennis Ball being up for elimination. This is episode 24. It is titled Say Hijack. So, it's 41 minutes long. I'll be very curious to see what they're actually going to do without a challenge. So, let's find out. Say Hijack. Here we go. Okay, so I have just finished watching BFDIA 24 Say Hijack. Now, holy fuck, what in the world is that? That is crazy. Okay, alright, I see you, BFDIA, you're cooking. Whoa. First of all, this one wasn't in theaters. That's crazy. The amount of shots that would look kind of hard on a theater is actually crazy. I mean, I know that, like, at the end of the day, it's one of those things where, like, it's just dependent on outside factors, you know? Like, it's not really up to them to, get cinema approval, and especially considering I don't really know how those deals, tend to work. I think, yeah. The feeder has to want to show, and then like split the revenue or something between the feeders. So maybe it's just we didn't too many in a row. You can't saturate the feeders or whatever, right? Because at the end of the day, an episode a month that's more often than how long movies come out, right? So in general, I get it, maybe. However, I do certainly think that this one would have been a good fit. Probably more than the Teapot episode, to be honest. But I guess external factors, something, can't do anything about it. And the whole release structure of this was a little weird because like you announce it yesterday night, just sort of at random, only to then proceed to drop this episode at a very random time. It dropped, well, if I'm not mistaken, it dropped here at 2:18, which, like, 2:18 in the morning, which, I mean, it's not that necessarily there's a problem with that, right? Like, sometimes things are going to release in the evening US, sure, right? However, it's like, because that's like 8 p.m. US-ish, right? So, like, in general, that's not weird. I just find it weird how, like, the minutes went. You see, it wasn't really lined up to an hour, which is kind of interesting. So I'm not exactly sure what was going on behind the scenes because it wasn't hyped up as it usually does, right? You see, I kind of like this episode. It's almost like if we were maybe searching for the theater, right? Because the theater also acts as a good way to immediately do episode hype up, right? So maybe that episode's done, but the feeder's not released. So it's like, okay, well, let's just drop it. But then there's no time to do the hype up, right? Then it's like, what are we going to do? All that stuff's been going. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on there. So there's a lot of interesting external waffle going on with the release timing of this episode and the feeder stuff and why it didn't get one compared to the other ones. Well, the Teapot, does it mean that our feeder release is done for now? Will Teapot, did you get in them? What is going to happen, right? There should be a Teapot episode in a couple months, but that means that we'll roughly be like once without a feeder release and we'll be able to do it again. II's doing that one for the 15th anniversary. So I mean, they're unrelated entities, but of course the feeders might not want to show too much object show stuff in general, so maybe, you know, that could be a little bit of a problem, right? You see, like, all of these things are kind of factoring into it, but in general, it's intriguing to see it. But anyways, actually heading into BFDIA, in terms of the general episode, yeah, that is very, very good. Animation, of course, is absolutely stellar. BFDIA animation is just elite. There's really not much to say about it. They allow the animators the shots are allowed to look however they look, right? We're helped out by the fact that the environments are, you know, engineered to also look really good. You know, the night sky looks great, the environment looks great with the sun and everything, right? Like, it does all angles, it looks fire, and it does it. I'm not gonna say that this is the ceiling, right, of how object show animation can look, but as far as the modern era, like, level animators, I definitely think that this is getting there. This feels like it's getting to the ceiling. Like, how much better could this even look? You know, like, we're getting to the ceiling. And I think that it's very cool to see them be capable of actually, you know, reaching that ceiling a little bit more, which is rather nice. And then in terms of writing this episode, you know, okay, writing this episode is a complicated task, right? Because you don't start off with a template, right? Because this episode doesn't have a template. This episode is the vote to win episode, which means that there's no actual challenge, which gives you more open book episode, right? Because of course that means that you can sort of write anything, right? Because anything will play because there's no challenge. However, you also don't have that rule set that sort of bases it, right? Because one of the good things about object show rating is that it does give you a predefined structure, right? And the good thing about the predefined structure of a episode like this, of an object show episode, of the predefined structure of a regular object show episode means that in general, like, one of the hardest parts, which, you know, like that in general inventing, you don't need to do as much, right? But so here, heading into this episode, you don't do it. Now, how do we solve this problem, right? We sort of create a very similar structure, right? We don't create the challenge structure. However, we create a very similar structure that gets us an episode that still feels as if it was a challenge episode, however, in a different way. By doing what? What does it do? There's people talking in the back. I don't know if you can hear them, but I'm sorry for that. That's not me, of course. They're different people. How does it solve it? Well, it solves it by pretty much structuring it like a challenge. It sort of invents a challenge structure for it. Not because, like, okay, here's the deal. It's not because, they can only do challenge structures, right? It's just that having a challenge structure inherently means that it'll still feel relatively familiar in terms of pacing, in terms of other stuff. So it just makes more sense, especially for BFDIA, to do a proper challenge structure. And while, like, it's not a competition episode, you know, there's still, like, goals that have to get achieved and stuff, right? So then, like, the pacing is similar, right? Because, like, that is probably also one of the reasons why Teapot ends up getting backlash. It does a lot of these kind of non-competition big stretches, and then it ends up being a little bit of a problem, right? Because, like, the pacing is directly different from episode to episode. You know, BFDIA, despite this being a technically non-competition episode, it's really focusing on still having a pacing that is resembling a regular BFDIA, right? Because, so what are the sections? Still sends the characters also in different places. So, right, tennis ball has to make the cake take place, right? And then proceeds to meet Leafy and do all that stuff, okay? Needle needs to make the cake and gets, like, majority of the cast, right? Book needs to go to the edge of the world and then ends up getting some cast over there, right? And then ends up seeing new locations, right? So in the same way that the last batch of BFDIA challenges, and nearly every batch of BFDIA challenges has rolled, is pretty much the characters are all sort of going in different paths, you know? So that means that when you cut back, you'll be like, okay, you here, you here, you here. So there's like 3 plots, right? It's not too confusing. They're completely different areas, right? So it's very easy to see. It's just done smartly, right? Which means that it's very nice. And honestly, yeah, like looking at BFDIA, it's definitely that, like, I think that the way that BFDIA has been going, and the fact that BFDIA, you know, these last 2 episodes have been absolutely on fire for BFDIA, means that, like, I think that it does probably harm the perception of Teapot, to be honest, a little bit, because, like, I think that the way that BFDIA is right now is definitely how I think a majority of people want Jack and Jellyfy Object Show to act like, right? Like, it's got complexity. It's got, the characters have some nuance to them, right? Like, Nito's not nothing. Like, Book's not nothing. Tennis Ball's not nothing. They're all characters with some depth and some of understanding. It's not exaggeratingly deep, because why would it be, right? It looks stunning. It's written in a way where serious events might still happen. However, in general, there's a lot of fun to be had, right? And then all of these events are like together in a very nice and cohesive way to make a long episode that doesn't even feel long because of how, you know, enticing it is. And then it's solid, right? Whereas a Teapot, you know, specifically strays away to focus more on giving the characters an additional to level up in terms of the nuance. However, when you reach that extra level, not everybody might get it. People might not like it, and therefore people don't like it. It's a way bigger damage, right? Like, if somebody doesn't like a character in BFDIA, it's not that deep. If somebody doesn't like a character in Teapot, then, you know, the amount of exposition they get is significantly higher, right? So, like, in general, I see why, you know, especially after watching this episode, I can see why the Teapot, you know, dislike is there, because, like, looking at this, it's like, yeah, Teapot could, I guess, have also been this, and I think more people might have enjoyed it. However, I don't think it's as creatively fulfilling, and BFDIA is here for this exact purpose, so, yeah, it'll just be interesting to see what's post BFDIA, because BFDIA is ending next week, so, it'll be no, it's ending this week. Yeah, it'll be intriguing to see. Anyways, let's actually talk about the episode's event. So Nickel is on fire because they're imitating Fiery. Because we have Leafy working on a revamped niceness chart. Not gonna lie, don't know about this one. This does mean that Teapot niceness chart. Remember that Teapot niceness chart and Teapot 20. Now that's inaccurate, because why did Leafy revert back down? Just say it. But now, rather having a nicer chart that's apparently more dynamic, right? It's more direct, like you can kind of, you know, you move up and down, and all that jazz. So, we end up having some fellas. Leafy really doesn't want to Flower and Bubble to know that she stole Dream Island, because they apparently don't know, which is interesting. So, yeah, the twin blue stars are already present, by the way, from this sky. Which is very intriguing, if you pay attention to it. Then the bugs coming in again. Those are like the deaf ones. And then we end up having the fellas going over in the hand-powered recovery center, and the trio, and the pull-on of the episode, of course, I said, goes that no host wants to host, which is bad. No, because that means that the competition's cancelled. They go, like, okay, fine, we host, alright? But then without a host, you know, properly host, we need to do the segments ourselves. So, we need to go to the Florilegium, my favorite thing that was always there. Shout out BFDIA and inventing new masterpieces of plot, you know? But you see, here's the thing, when Teapot does it, you see, cause this is what I mean. By making Teapot over serious, if Teapot added this, people would go fucking nuts on it. But, like, if the BFDIA does it, it's just fun vibes, right? You know, because at the end of the day, the vibe you set yourself is the vibe that you will, you know, that people will follow you by. But yeah, get to all the votes, and then we end up having the triple segment as they proceed to go. If you write bad votes, the universe kind of crumbles. Shout out to just how cool that environment looks. It's, I don't know, just animation in general. It's like, it's very hard to even, like, comment on it, because it's just, it's just good. It's just good. You know, it's just very, 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 very solid. And there's just the animators have freedom, and they now have also a lot of talent and are able to get the animation done in a lot of levels, right? And just the elevation that has happened in the past few years in terms of the top echelon of object show animators. It's a lot. It was a lot of improvement that has been made, and you can really feel it, and it's very, very nice stuff. Anyways, we end up having Book. Okay, so Book proceeds to try to just ask people around for some votes. They end up asking the Strange, okay, as we discovered. So you gotta ask the Strange, which are the other people, apparently. Of course, because those are the voters, right? So we end up having to try to vote. Now, it turns out that actually the people there, all these recommended characters, they're not the voters, but, we'll find out later. Needle's trying to make a cake, but eventually decides, hold up, I do want my friends to help me, okay? I'm not a win solo, so I'm going to get all my friends to help me this time, so I'm going to fetch all of my friends. And in the meantime, they drop the yeast on the ground. And remember, yeast grows very quickly. This will be important. We proceed to have a tennis ball make a cake a steak place. GB does not approve. But in the meantime, we end up having a tennis ball try to ask them, and eventually they end up having a convo with Leafy. Leafy ends up doing, for maybe the first time in her entire career, some decent manipulation, and proceeds to go like, hey, tennis ball, you and I, we're the same. We're the nice one. Now everyone hates us because we wanted Dream Island, and now we're misunderstood because nobody wants to respect us anymore. So even though we're not the villain, we know it ourselves, right? So it's a surprisingly functional, analogy here from Leafy, I must admit. And tennis ball roughly agrees to go along with it. Book's votes apparently are all. Every vote says, "Bring me horrifying sludge," which is interesting. Because apparently they needed to do that. Now, they need to do that. So they go over to revive the horrifying sludge because apparently all of the 2 million of others voted for them. Free Smart Super Kitchen. This is a thing now. It's a good looking kitchen. Free Smart just has one of everything, which is interesting. You want like a Free Smart microwave. There's probably like one, but there's one of everything. There's like one Free Smart Superman. There's one Free Smart kitchen. There's never gonna be multiple. So that probably means they've got like one Free Smart, four, because they have to split it across the three of them. Then they're going over there and everybody's there. Then we end up Leafy going like, hey, tennis ball, can you host the greatest cake of steak ever invented? Then people will consider you really cool and stuff. So tennis ball goes like, okay. Sure, I could guess that might work if I create a cool invention. So that's fair. We end up having Leafy come in with the monologue. Glamour, you have the most glamour and pristine and beauty and pizzazz and brilliance and glamour and pristine and beauty and pizzazz and brilliance and dazzle and ugliness and smiles and frowns and mountains of fun. So true. Book proceeds to revive the horrifying sludge, and then we end up having Bubble give a relative a status out there of how it goes. Like you can really tell. With this final two, it's very intriguing. Like Book is just vibes, and then Needle is skill, Needle does things that are skillful, and Book doesn't necessarily do things that are super skillful, right? And Tennis Ball is more in the brain. So, brains, bronze, and then vibes. That's the trio that ends up making the final three. And Bubble points it out pretty well. Horrifying Sludge, not even alive anymore. Not exactly sure why. And they proceed to have an epic sludge fight. So fair enough. The people over there end up going over to build the cake to a relative degree of cooperation. I mean, of course, not too much. Bracelet gets a line. Alright. Sure, why not? We could. Alright, Bracelet. But yeah, we end up having to build facility, a flying kick and stake place that can fly, flying kick and stake place, yes, of course. Leafy proceeds to accidentally murder Woody that was still falling somehow, and they proceed to go on a side quest to revive Woody. I mean, this is the episode of side quests, of course, but yeah. After Nito instructs Godball to lead the group, they all end up going over and trying to make a cake. However, most people don't know what chocolate is, and most people don't know what cherries are, because remember, BFDI characters have about as many brain cells as the episode count. So, we proceed... A sherry, bro. Then they're going over there. We end up having a couple of callbacks that get refused, which is interesting. You know, the refused callbacks like Bombi not digging underground and stuff, which is fun. I like that because it's kind of like stopping it out once and for all. Because it's kind of okay. BFDI 23 was callback episode. Now let's not callback episode. You know, 23 callback episode, 24 adding new things and new levels to this Earth and stuff. So, yeah, Golfball preheating the oven. Then we have the sludge fight. As we have the sludge fight, we end up randomly inventing a song. Song time. Yes, I know, right? Music. Yeah, we end up having a little musical number as Book is trying to fetch the votes. This is pretty cool. It's not technically a full song, but, like, it's a cool track. Let's go. Yeah, it's cool. Again, the animation is sick for it, and then it randomly stops because phone says hello. The phone tells you hello. Follow the twin blue stars. Follow the twin blue stars. Follow the twin blue stars. Book has no idea what that means. However, we can sort of vibe it out, I guess, because the Book of Florilegium apparently tells you if you're going the right way, which is interesting. Then a tennis ball accidentally gets stuck in the hand power recovery center because Leafy pays no attention to anything ever. Tennis ball decides to go over and be like, yo, let's go look at this internal machinery then. And stuff. A Book eventually ends up following the Florilegium and then finding a gigantic gorge, as it says, Season 1 ancient historic relic. So there's a little bit of yeah, it's like an old challenge, I guess. We've ended up going into an old challenge. Then we end up making the cake. I do like what's going on in this cake making section, where it's like everybody is just sort of accidentally helping by kind of like trying to throw ingredients at each other, and then Nito just kind of vibing with it. So, you know, sometimes by hating, you end up making it work. Then we end up having the hand power recovery center. Tennis ball ends up trying to discover how it works. Yeah, it ends up that it doesn't actually. It's not that interesting, gang. You just it's you draw it and then you input it into the machine and then it works. You know, that's fair enough. I mean, like, to be fair, it's not like that technologically advanced. However, I mean, you do need to know, like, about what is going on, right? Before you can really, you do need to know what is going on, what everybody looks like before to make it draw. So, you know, like, you need kind of the robots that have kind of this telegraphic memory, right? Even though they don't draw very well, they draw the details, right? So that's kind of the important part. So that means that, like, hold on, if Pin has no arms, that doesn't mean that they don't draw Pin. They just don't recover Pin with arms on purpose. The fellas then coming back. Then we end up having Evil Leafy randomly show up because they're red and delicious. Okay, yellow face, bro. The yeast is growing very, 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 very quickly. In the meantime, we're using Pin as a spoon to mix, which is interesting. Although, even though Pin does not have a spoon as one of the limbs, that's a fork. But okay. Book decides to get in some help, and well, they can't ever fetch Fiery. They fail like 4 times, but they do fetch Ice Cube. So with that, we proceeded to try to get some help. They managed to eventually get over this one, this obstacle course after some big ass stalling. then we end up having the yeast, which has officially grown too big to ignore. Godball says it's fine as long as it doesn't interact with horrifying sludge. Problem, you remember they're having a sludge fight? It interacts with horrifying sludge, and they have decided it's time to go rolling, and it is destroying everything ever. I'm a massive fan of the ball going past the stolen house, and then I love how the show rewards criminal activity. That's really funny. That's really fun. And then the ball comes back to destroy it. In the meantime, Nito puts it in the oven, and then the oven proceeds to get stolen by the yeast, as everything does. In the meantime, there's a gigantic wall that we need to climb, as the Flora Legion ends up saying. They proceed to ask her to do the technique, which is intriguing. Now, what is the technique? I've heard that this might be a 5B reference. I looked at the comments. Apparently, this might be a 5B reference, because the thing about 5B, right, is that there was an impossible level or something. Where, because there was like an ending, it was like, oh, we're adding more levels, and then they never did. So then that one level that was supposed to be impossible, right, on purpose, eventually got beaten by a bug. That's this type of hopping between Ice Cube and Book, because they were stuck in there and their characters in there. So that's cool, like that. If it's true, I don't know. I haven't played 5B in ages. I haven't played 5B since, the Grand Old 2017. No, not that long ago. Like 2019. This has been a while, since those days. Now, Power Recovery Center is about to burn and die, which is not good. Tennis Ball's getting worried. Apparently, there's just an exit, which is interesting. As is about to happen, we end up having the idea that, hey, let's use the cake and steak place to fly the yeast away. That way, okay, the yeast will explode randomly in the sky. It's not going to be a problem, and then we're going to be good, right? And the Tennis World was like, fine, this is, I guess, a heroic thing I could do. The blue stars are officially seeable to Book. Ice Cube proceeds to suddenly know what to do. Not exactly sure how, to be honest, but they decide that that they know what to do, which is to press the button, and that causes a fling right towards the blue stars. We're in the sky, which means that animations in this section end up just being massively amped up. The sky in BFDI looks pretty as hell. Okay, I can't deny it. I like blue. Okay, you get me? But right as it's about to get lifted off, there's actually one more person with the yeast. So Nito desperately forces it to get saved. Tennis Ball tries to stop them, and they end up flying across. So the 3 finalists are in the sky alongside the mystery 4th person. Pin ends up getting tired. The stupid season's never gonna end. And then Book ends up also getting there. Because that weird conveyor belt ends up getting lost. We end up fetching the 4th person. Ends up being Evil Leafy. Yes, Evil Leafy is that additional person. And then we end up having a Tennis Ball doing I would say that final moment of the aura. Every character has like a very cool moment in this episode. That's one thing that I really like. This episode felt really even. They managed to make all of the characters do one really cool, important thing, right? While also having them be fun. Like you can really feel for as much as it's a bit of a misconception that screen time needs to be this way or that way or whatever way, right? With the 3 characters, you can tell that it's more possible to have an episode be really good and also have the screen time and importance levels be the same. But it really feels like, with this final 3, it is very proper, because you see how they're again, it's the strength, the strength, the vibes, and the brains, right? So they all have an equal level of importance to each other, which I think it's really strong. It's really interesting. And in a way, it's that final moment of glory for Tennis Ball as they proceed to eventually, fall down, and the last moments are about to happen. Nido goes to look for the cake in the oven because otherwise none of it will matter anyways. And Book officially gets all the way out. Nido ends up having a relatively epic fight with Evil Leafy, which has started growing evil black limbs. I don't even know, but yeah, it's a cool ass fight. This would have looked pretty fire in the cinema, but Nido, the challenge beast, will never back down and manages to stop Evil Leafy by shoving them in the cake, not leaving them an escape mechanism, and eventually making a sacrifice. You go in the cake, I go in there, and you see, that is the ultimate moment for Nido. That is Nido's ultimate moment. You have managed to defeat, well, not once and for all, but I mean, there hasn't been that much Evil Leafy in the recent seasons, but not once and for all, most likely, but at least for this time, Evil Leafy is currently getting defeated by Nido, which is nice, and that ultimate moment for Nido, being that proper, like, hey, Nido is a beast, just a beast, so physically capable, the strongest competitor in terms of a battle, the most, proper locked into the competition type competitor that there is, and, Nido is a very, 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 very good player, and I think if it was a judge panel, I would say that a judge panel would make Nido win BFDIA. But last thing is, Book proceeds to go over to the edge of the universe. Yes, so they're at the edge of the universe, and right there at the edge of the universe, there is the guy. I forgot your name. The guy from the video from Jack and Jellyfy who ate the chocolate. What's your name, bro? Sorry, I forgot. It wasn't like George. What was it? Oh, God. Oh, no. I should know what it's called. Man, you see, that kind of pisses me off. Because I should know. But I don't know. Well, hold on. Let me see if I know your name. Damn it. I don't know. I don't know the names, but it's the Mr. Jack. Was that the name? Yeah, I think it was Jack. But either way, they end up being there, and this is extremely cool. This is extremely, extremely cool. I mean, it's interesting because it's so smart, because it's the one guy. Oh yeah, Jack's name was also in the episode. I forgot you opened this bitch ass book. But by the way, there's a lot. Speaking of book, there's a lot of one-liners in this episode that are funny. I can't go through them all, But Ice Cube being like, books don't talk, book. Okay, bro. There's a lot of very fun one-liners, but when an episode's this long, I'm not exactly going to be able to go through all of them. But yes, this episode is very nice in terms of Smiley World. It's like every minute and a half, 2 minutes, there's always one line that makes you go, And but I think out of all of them, this might be the smartest thing, is the proper taking a look at the resources that BFDIA has given you throughout its history and making it something really cool right there at the end by being like, okay, this is the only human who is directly and fully and properly a human in the BFDI universe. They are the only BFDI character in history that can technically vote. So that means that to fetch the votes, we have to go to one of the strange, which is properly this guy. His eyes are the are the two twin blue stars, and it's cool. So hold on, this guy just he just likes voting. Yeah, he just counts the vote. He's just like bored, okay? Jack is just like a bored kid who likes counting the votes from the entire population. Okay, cool. You know, like Jack is a representation of those people that make like the charts for BFDIE and then they count the votes, right? But anyways, we proceed to tell the book the very, very accurate votes. Yeah, we end up going, nope, you can't meet us. It's not good to mix it. Fries is also there. I don't know. That might be. Jack might have a Fries plushie. Okay, that's gonna be that's the canonical reason I'm gonna give. In general, it's cool. It's cool. That is cool. That was the moment where I got proper impressed. You know, like out of all moments. You know, because I already think this episode was very smartly written already in terms of how it was structured, but like as soon as I saw that and how that ended up playing out, I was like, yes, this is excellent. This is excellent. It really feels like there's a proper sense of taking in tools from the past and using it now, which is something that BFDI at its core has always been very good. BFDI especially has always been very good. It's been to call back to its past, right? This is one of the things that makes it the most iconic, is how, you know, jokes can become iconic by the factoid of them getting called back on, right? And even these details being important for the later story elements is all that BFDIA derives with, right? And it's I think the crux of its success, as always, and still does arrive from that, right? From its capability of reminding you of what it did, from jokes to serious elements to properly. It connects a universe in a way that is so intricate and proper that it really feels nice, right? Because it's like, yeah. So in terms of past to present, BFDA was excellent then, remains excellent now. The only thing, of course, you know, like we're still gonna need to, of course, see in terms of the past to of the present to future. That is one of the things that historically we have struggled with, right? We have struggled with giving ourselves a proper leeway into a future event, right? You know, Teapot has suffered from this a lot, where it's kind of like events aren't properly foreshadowed, and then it ends up being a bit awkward. Then there's a retcon here and a retcon there, right? Because of not properly lining up the future, right? But like if the present writing is looking at the past, they do it excellent. If the present writing has to hint at the future, then they struggle a bit more, and that's still, I think, not something that they've done perfectly, right? But this is again more of a Teapot problem because BFDAs are set in the past, anyways, right? So yeah, everybody's back, and we can officially host the Cake at Stake. They all roughly do it together until somebody tells them to stop. And Tennis Ball ends up reading out the votes. Tennis Ball has been officially eliminated with 41,228 votes. They end up exploding, I guess. And that Golf Ball is satisfied at this. And then Needle, the freaking spinning again. It looks so pretty. The sky is so good. Oh my god, good job. But yeah, Tennis Ball proceeds to get this a bronze medal for their efforts, and we end up having the final moment. An intriguing announcer voice is going on. It seems to be what is going on with BFDIA. Maybe the announcer might give in a last second arrival? Maybe? Will the announcer give in a last second moment? Because you see it's glitching out, so maybe the announcer might come back here last second to kind of try to announce the votes, you know, try to take the show. That feels like a thing they're doing, you know. I mean, you can tell from BFDIE that we are more comfortable with actively writing the announcer, so maybe right, something like that. They're coming back for the finale of BFDIE, try to take the show back. I mean, we already understand that you like taking your show back, so that seems to be relatively interesting. Nito gets like 17 cakes. for winning 100 bonus votes in the finale, win the season, or be demoted to 22nd place. Dude, what are what are these? A friend who understands. Erase your memory of this season forever. Okay. Is Trevor winning the prize? Getting that? Only walnut shrimp. Okay. That's fun. And then finally, we end up having the proper scene. Vote for you want to win Dream Island. This looks so cool. Graphic design. It's I like it. I like the graphic design. Look at these billboards. Look at the book and needle in there. Look at the lights. It's purple. I like purple. I'm biased. Blue's my favorite color and purple's my second favorite. But what the hell? The twin blue stars are up there. So the vote. So if both likes and dislikes get you a vote. So it's just whichever video has the most total engagement with it, which is intriguing. So we'll have to see. Vote me. And then at the final minute, we end up having Gopal's idea to get Pin's limbs back, which of course ends up being presumably an idea to set up the IDFB, right, where Pin ends up getting their limbs back in terms of taking the red figment to turn into the limbs, right? If I'm not mistaken, that's what BFDIA that's what IDFB says happens. So we have to set that up. So they're being smart there. Yeah, I mean, overall, we end up having to vote to win. Who's winning? Now, as far as after BFD 23, book winning felt like the very, 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 very likely option. Because, Needle wasn't, that popular. Book was always a bit more popular. And Book, you feel good for Book winning. Book is a feel-good story, right? I feel like this episode does even it out a little bit because Needle does do a lot. Gets the friends to help out in general. We end up getting a lot of notes about why Needle's good. Needle's an extremely strong competitor. Needle, was at the end of the day a bit of everybody's friend, right? And in general, sort of everybody, nobody dislikes Needle, so the viewers shouldn't as well. However, at the end of the day, Book still also does a lot of important things. This episode has a sick ass musical number, meets God, meets us, the humans, meets the strange, right? All of these things are true at the same time. Oh wait a minute, no, hold. Random remembering, Fries met Jack in that one episode, so that's why he's there, right? Because that one episode where we started off with Jack, it was called, I think Jack was even in the name of that episode, ends up being, right? And then that was what that was, right? So now Fries is just homies, right? Okay. I random moment. I'm sorry. I was just a random moment of memory having. I was just like, oh yeah. In that episode, what the hell was that episode? It was, no, Jack wasn't even in it. I don't know. Was it Well Look Who It Is? Is that what it was? I don't know. But either way, yeah, I think Fries met Jack, so that's why they're homies. Okay, I get it. But anyways, my final winner prediction remains Book. I think the things Book does in this episode, but that fight scene from Needle was sick as fuck. It's gonna be close. I think it's gonna be close. But I think that Book did just enough in terms of having cool musical numbers, that final moment with Jack and stuff, that I think that even though Needle definitely brings it up by getting a lot of chat in the episode, being very likable in this episode overall, having an epic fight scene, right, and a lot of successes, I think that Book will just eke it out. I don't know how many likes this is gonna have. It's gonna be a lot of us. I'm gonna say Book. Book's my final prediction. Still, I think it feels a bit more likely, but I can totally understand Needle now. That was where I couldn't really an episode ago. It would be cool. I think both of them are good winners, but I do think that Book is a bit more likely to win right now, but overall, yeah. Alright, anyways, that is BFDIA 24. We end up closing it off with an important scene where Bubble and Flower discover that Leafy stole Dream Island because they didn't know after Tennis Ball told them, and Leafy tries to tell them that they're not going to go back, and Bubble proceeds to do the greatest rage-inducing thing of all time and slowly lower Leafy on the niceness chart all the way to the bottom pits of hell until in the final frame, Evil Leafy shows up, which is intriguing. I wonder if that's because... I wonder if that's a gag or if that's actually what happened. If that one frame of Evil Leafy showing up is that Leafy turns into Evil Leafy. But like that, that's cool. It's interesting. We'll get to see what happens. It seems to be, of course, the one of the main things that's gonna go down alongside the announcer. That ends up making it work. So yeah, that. But it's sick. And in the meantime, one last thing I want to do. All right, you know what I'm gonna do. Since I think that this animation is truly elite, I think that it's pretty much at the ceiling of what I could expect this type of animation to look like. You know what? Thank you to Ade, Aiden Gomez, Elam Hadzik, Anthony Acedo, Brandon Mader, Bribey, Chelsea Winters, Cormac Oliver, Don Shamuzu, Diego De La Torre, N64 Dude 2000, Fran Mateos, G Forbo, Griffin Weber, Haley Black, Jackie Skinner, Jaco Gell, Joseph Hendrick, Joseph Pack, Caden Bain, Callan Ingram, El Madbro, Nayla Da Silva, Zany Leaves, Nublis, Yellow Angiru, and Zachary Friedland for locking in and giving us epic animation. And I'm sorry if I said any of your names wrong. I've never heard them, so I just kind of have to guess it phonetically. That is BFDIA 24. Good job, BFDIA. Truly good job. Next thing. Alright, next up, as promised, we are going over to the Daylight Savings Object Show created by liviciabattery. Episode 3 has released because yesterday it was Daylight Savings in the Eastern Time Zone, which means that it is due time for another Daylight Savings Object Show. As a reminder, what happened last time? Last time we were dissing Daylight Savings and its purpose, and that made Sunny very, very, very sad. And Moony got upset and decided that it was to showcase the importance of Daylight Savings and how much you care. To Sunny, and each team proceeded to do it. One team wrote a great poem about it, which ends up clearly being better than the other team's presentation, which Sunny gets mad at because you're telling me the importance of Daylight Savings. Yeah, fair enough. This team ends up losing, and we'll see what happens next because it's time for the Daylight Savings Object Show number 3, which is titled "We Gotta Get Moony Back." Here we go. Alright, that is episode 3 of the Daylight Savings Object Show. Now, I think one of the most interesting things about the Daylight Savings Object Show is that it ends up being really, really memorable. I don't know what it is about it. I've been trying to figure this out because, like, the thing about it is that this show has a very unique vibe to it, you know? Like, I feel like this is absolutely, the construction of what is gonna definitely, I would say, currently be remembered as a great little series, you know, because it does such a interestingly sort of kind of have unique vibe to it that is very, very intriguing. I think that, like, the best way that I can really describe it, right, is that, okay, how would I describe it? I would say that this is written less like an object show, more like how a cartoon would write an object show. Does that make sense? Because the thing about it is that object show writing is a bit more focused on trying to replicate a semblance of a realism, right? To where like, not really, but like, realism in terms of interaction of a character. They might stumble on a word, it might, be, the conversation might be awkward, right? It might not be perfectly timed and everything, right? So, like, it's because it's supposed to resemble, to a degree, a reality show, where, like, at the end of the day, everything's edited to make the story, but, like, in general, so that's, like, the crux of object show writing, right? Now, this feels a bit more like a cartoon writing, because it gives off, like, it's more directly, like, each scene is properly written, like, nearly every line is properly written to cause something, like, there's basically no line in this show that isn't supposed to advance something, right? Because it's proper cartoon. They have to overall in 15 minutes make a relatively big story. And that means that, like, in general, a cartoon, I would say, feels a little bit more scripted than your average object show. However, it also makes it for a cleaner experience, and it gives off a bigger focus on music. That's how I would best describe it. I have no idea if this is any agreeable, but that's, I think, that my personal way of interpreting the writing of this show, because it's rather similar. It gives all kind of written vibes to it, which makes it, for however, a very clean thing. It does a lot in a little amount of time. All the way down to the host, which, I'd say both hosts are very clearly scripting their challenges, which is rather cool. And then it's just nice, and I think that's what makes this vibe unique, mainly, other than, just kind of having a little bit over the top characters and stuff, and the eliminated characters end up being Mike and Pop Filter for very obvious reasons, although they are surprisingly not that much there, because remember, Mike and Pop are the ones who originally dissed Daylight Savings, causing the whole ordeal in episode 2 to happen in the first place. We have The Merge featuring an epic song. What's the song? Wait. It's The Merge, it's the Merge, it's the Merge. We're doing the Merge. I don't know. I would need to learn it. But, cool animation, and then we have ourselves a challenge. Moony gets stolen by some star people, and it's time to go save her. Who will win? I don't know, we'll find out. So, every character here has a relative scene. Minty ends up getting told off by Mitty that, no, we can't split up. We should stick together because I don't think you'll last a day alone. Bit of a mean thing, kind of, for Mitty to say. Minty believes in themselves and proceeds to go alone. Turns out that Mitty was right. Minty proceeds to nearly immediately get caught by the star people. And then ends up going over to the stake, where Moony ends up being held because they're apparently reporting some type of epic ritual for the sake of it. Then in the meantime, as Strawberry and Streetlight are keeping it moving, eventually we end up getting a bucket of water to diffuse the water, which Strawberry ends up doing. However, now that means that the stars are chasing her. This allows Streetlight to go over and save Moony while Strawberry is running away. In the meantime, one of the stars ends up talking to Mitty and having a conversation, which is a great little conversation. I actually like this conversation a lot. It's nice to give Mitty some depth, some focus, considering it's harder to get mini depth compared to other characters, right? And we get a bit more information on John, which is the name of this older star. I really like how the star is animated. It gives off kind of it's nearly humanoid in a way, right? It almost feels like it's rotoscoped, which I think is really interesting. So yeah, I like how the star looks. And then eventually we end up having the confirmation that Streetlight is safe. Strawberry gets so much so for an alliance, huh? Okay. Strawberry, what are you on? I'm sorry, only one of you can win the challenge. Moony right there. Or were you like, no, we should have had the Streetlight go and help you. That way, Minty ends up winning the challenge. And then both of you get for elimination. And you both get out because you're distracted to do the challenge. Right? And either way, you want Streetlight to help you. What you want them to do? What? You think Streetlight can help you? Next thing month did happen, you push them away, and then they get replaced, and then you need to go help them, and then we end doing a loop like every BFDI episode when something happens. Right, like what I said about, there's nothing there. I don't know. Nothing, what? And then so much for like, this isn't a betrayal. This is just that there's nothing they can do about that. There is A, nothing they can do. B, they'll lose the both of them will lose the challenge. And like, and C, Strawberry wouldn't get eliminated anyways. I swear to God, bro, if Strawberry actually is pissed because Streetlight didn't throw, I'm about to riot. That about to be a character anti-redemption arc. Anyway, that's about to eliminate. Minty should pretty clearly get out. Right? I mean, like, I understand this whole cause of, like, independence thing, but, like, they're the one that don't want... so, like... Okay, here's the deal. I understand that maybe you can be like, oh, Mitty should get out because they said to Minty, oh, yo, you can't survive on your own. But then it's like, I mean, like, they wanted to help actively. They were like, yo, we should stick together. And then Minty's like, no, I don't want to stay together. Grr. And then they proceed to go over there and proceed to fail miserably and then not show up in the rest of the episode. Right? So, alongside that, they also have the failure of the challenge in the last episode by being like, we need to do a presentation, and then they fail. So it's like, it's no. I don't know. Mitty could get out because some people don't like characters that don't speak properly, right? So like, I could see it, but Minty should get out. Should, absolutely. Especially after the cool MIDI scene with John and stuff. But yeah, that is the Daylight Savings Object Show. Big fan of the Daylight Savings Object Show. I really think that, you know, with this vibe that I'm kind of trying to say, that I don't even know if this way that I'm describing it as more kind of cartoonesque writing compared to Object Show writing, is even a correct way to look at it, right? I personally, my brain thinks it's correct, but, you know, you might disagree. But, like, I would say that this is the more this is good. All right, this is overall good stuff. I think this is gonna be an option that's remembered very positively because it's a show that knows so clearly what it's doing. It knows the vibe that it's doing. It writes the episodes well, not making them long, not making it like a massive event, just kind of doing what it needs to properly, like a cartoon. Having the characters that are very memorable, each one of them with a proper reason to exist, not having a lot of them, meaning that the time gimmick can work, right? While still having the episodes in a reasonable time, while having the time gimmick itself be not only baked into how the show operates because of daylight savings and Moony and Sunny being super into that, and then not only that, the disc to Arizona, but then like they're doing all of that while still having just the general concept be a good concept because the daylight savings happens in the right type of intervals, right? Like every 3 months, 4 months, which kind of gives it that allowance for an episode to get a proper level of production indeed in around that time, and then roughly most likely be done unless something really weird is going on, right? So like it's just. It really is. I said this, I think, when I talked about the Daily Savings Army show originally, but this is an expertly made show, proper professional, from ideation to writing to animation to everything. Every part about this is very professional, very well executed, very well thought out. So, GG on the Daylight Savings Object Show. Next thing. Alright, next up we are going over to the series which I was supposed to look at yesterday. I'm going to be straight up for you, and then I did not have time for, which was the updates from Yourboitayy. Yes, Yourboitayy has uploaded a lot of things throughout the past 2 weeks, so we're going to catch up on those. And we're starting off with a full series, which is why I didn't quite have time for it yesterday. Up the Tube, which is the one that had its episode 5 released 2 weeks ago. However, since that's episode 5, that means that there's 4 more episodes before that, indeed, and we shall watch them. Starting off with episode 1, released 6 months ago, titled TS Show So Tough. So true. Let's go watch it. Let's go see what this show is all about. Okay, that is episode 1 of Up the Tube. So, Let's take this episode, where like not much stuff really happens, to sort of say, the general, vibe here, alright, that we have here for this show. So, in terms of animation and in terms of everything, really, this is very similar to what we have seen modern Yourboitayy shows to be, right? Which, like, the animation is very, very resembling of Battle for Powers, so is the writing. Everything's very resemblant of it, which can definitely be a positive, right? Because one of the things about Battle for Powers is that, of course, it starts significantly worse, and it sort of levels up as, time passes and we get better. So actually starting a show at this quality could definitely be a big positive, so I'm not against that. And it also, however, does still carry all of the sort of weirder elements of the style, right? Which means that not a lot of dynamic, fluid movement can be done. It's just kind of characters standing there, and then they open their mouths. And in general, the main one is just the personality, right? Like the one thing that these shows, right, these Yourboitayy shows have that set them. That like sets them as a different example than usual is that basically it's just sort of what happens if you're not really considering much of a personality when it comes to shooting a character. And like this doesn't mean that the characters don't have personalities. They will have subtle ones, but in general, right, the raw vibe of how a character's personality is, it's nearly all based on a template, and then work is done from there, right? But the template is always the same, right? And that's sort of what happens, right? Because like you'll notice the characters, like they're all voice acted the same, right? In a way where it's like, okay, well, we've seen shows where nearly every character is voice acted by the same person, even the daylight savings object show, right? So like even then, we've seen that. So what sets it apart is that, well, the voice acting is not aligned to a character's personality, in the sense where it's like a meaner character might talk with a bit more of a roughness, or like a more impatient character might talk faster, right? Or a character who's shyer might talk, quieter compared to a louder one, right? Like all these little details where it's like, even if you have the same voice for all the characters, the vibe of the character changes how that voice is supposed to sound, right? But in this case, it all sounds the same. It all sounds very similar. And this is that getting shown off to its maximum example, and I think that it is a solid example to show, right? Because like it really shows off how, like, if you voice act, especially if you're doing voice acting as all the characters, that like I think that like this, like there isn't like a technical problem with this, right? However, I do think that like it makes the general vibe of the show very monotone, is the best way I can say it, right? Like it's a very monotone type of vibe because of this type of thing, that this show ends up doing, because every character talks in the same way, kind of has the same personality, everything's kind of super similar, and same with the characters kind of dismissive of each other stuff. This is what ends up happening, right? And it's true for Battle for Power, it's true for this, and it's true for currently pretty much any show by Yourboitayy. Super quickly, what actually happens, we end up having that pre-jargon waffle between our contestants. Then eventually we end up having the team forming by a panda hat guy, which ends up being relatively, which is biased apparently, challenges to cross the border in a race. They proceed to do that. And we end up having some fellas manage to make it, as Team Majestic is up for elimination. Who's going to eliminate? No idea. But we'll find out in episode 2, which is titled Took Her to the O. We'll talk a bit more in depth about the characters in that section. Let's go. Okay, that is episode 2 of Up to Tube. So, that is that. Let's talk about some of the characters. So, we've got ourselves some interesting cast of characters. We have got characters such as, we have got ourselves a water bottle. Apparently, I think boyfriends with hot Cheetos, which I'm not. I mean, I don't know. Hot Cheetos is a very negative Nancy, so I'm not sure which one is necessarily gonna exactly be too much. If like, I don't know if that's true. I don't know. I've not heard from the other side, but yeah, we've got some characters like this science tube, I guess, which ends up. Being the super smart man. Then there's the Wii case. Apparently the Wii case is from the hood. Apparently back in the hood they used to play Wii games. They used to play Call of Duty on Wii. So alright then, fair enough. Then we got ourselves the microwave. Microwave is kind of the goofy one. You can tell they do have a little bit of a goofy voice, to be fair. So like there is a little bit of kind of making some of the more extreme characters sound a bit different, which is nice. Then we've got ourselves. Who else is interesting? I think that hand sanitizer thinks they're the best, right? I think they're like, I'm the best. But they also have a front-facing angle, which is interesting and kind of cool. In this episode, we have ourselves a rapper fella who ends up being a little bit of a problem. And we end up having the eliminated contestant be Backpack. Backpack was kind of that one character I was like, oh, I'm worthless, I think, if I'm not mistaken, back in episode 1. So they end up getting eliminated with the singular vote. So, well, rip to them, you shall be missed. Then we end up having a challenge, which is to survive in the O block. I don't know what that is. I'm gonna be 100% honest. You know, I think I understand things, like, okay, but like the O block, not sure what that is. Just straight up. So you know, I'm not gonna judge it because I don't know it. But we end up having the challenge being to just survive in the O block for as long as possible. I mean, I'm guessing that it's kind of like, you know, place that is dangerous becomes meme because dangerous, right? It's kind of like Ohio or whatever. You know, where it's like, I mean, oh, it's impossible to spend 3 minutes in Ohio because in Ohio weird things happen. Ooh, right? You know, when John wasn't. There's an Xbox case character called Emma, by the way, which is interesting, because there was the purple one in Battle for Powers that also had its own name. If you think I remember it, I don't. But we end up having this. So I guess now Xbox cases, those have different names, which is interesting though, because I mean the Wii case is called Wii case, so but the Xbox cases have their own unique names. So then, like, if a Wii case changed color, would they also start having names? How would that work? You know, I'm feeling some stuff going on. Yeah, we have Nightboss, who was the leader of the team. We end up having some other fellas. We end up having the Flashlight. Oh yeah, the Flashlight character is apparently rappers. Famous rapper. Everybody really likes him, and the mega pop of me. So apparently Flashlight, popular rapper, so keep out. They have an epic plan. Our plan is don't die. Whoa, now that I didn't think about that. Then we have Minecraft. Minecraft is apparently a completely unrelated character to Dirtblock from Battle for Power, which looks exactly the same, but if we ignore that detail, they did say that they're apparently a different character, so we're going to treat them as such. No correlation between the two shows, alright? And then eventually, after some more people die, there at the O block, we end up having the elimination team. The other team, Team Sigma, ended up being up for elimination. I mean that everybody is currently up for elimination. No idea what the one voter is going to vote, but we'll see. Let's say Hot Cheetos. Just kind of around. We're just throwing a name into the pool of names and seeing if it goes. So yeah, that's the current status of the characters. Let's now go to episode 3, which is titled Devious. I mean, I know I skipped a few that I don't have much to say on. Episode 3 is titled Devious Lick. Here we go. Okay, Okay, that is episode 3 of Up the Tube. So we have ourselves another episode, of course, where we have ourselves the challenge. First of all, by the way, I never mentioned the intro. This intro is very standard for our standards. However, it's an interesting song. I don't know what it is. I don't know what this track is that I'm hearing. It's a very interesting chiptune. But anyway, we opposed to the elimination. We're the eliminated contestant based on 3 votes. Ooh. Ended up being Fanta. Got eliminated apparently for cheating. What was Fanta trying to do? If I'm not mistaken, Fanta tried to give the gang members from the O Block money, right? Try to hand them money, but then they just took the money and shot Fanta anyways. Does that count as cheating? I mean, it's bribery, I guess, but does it count as cheating? Why would it be cheating? Why would giving money be cheating? Because I mean, like the rules don't say you gotta survive poor. You know, if you can convince them with money, then that's fine. We're on the crime zone, anyways. We're in crime city, right? So I think we're good. But all right then. We end up having the challenge. So the challenge is to hit a lick. Okay. Yes. Yeah. So a lick, apparently, according to slang, which I've never heard of, is slang for stealing. So basically, the challenge is to steal as much money as possible. Now, it's an interesting word, and it makes for a relatively interesting challenge because you have to steal money, which means that you can't, that the money which you have already doesn't end up being valued. So that's why, for example, Flashlight was about to have an idea, or Minecraft goes like, no, I'm not losing, bro. You're not submitting your ideas to anybody. And it's like, okay. I mean, okay, to be fair, Flashlight's idea was going to be like, yo, we should do a lick. But, like, in general, Minecraft proceeds to go over here, shut down the idea, only to not suggest anything, and then that team just ends up losing based on nothing. Because like the only idea that they possibly had was to get Top Hat's money, because Top Hat is the rich character, right? That's quote unquote. But then it's like, hold on, if you agree for Top Hat to give you their money, then that means that it's not a robbery anymore because you didn't steal it, right? They allowed it to happen. So yeah, it's just not exactly correct there, to be honest. So they end up losing. In the meantime, the other team ends up getting a punch lesson from this guy. I don't know. Yourboitayy shows are like, they're mildly at a step of like gangsterness that I'm just like not there yet. I'm saying yet. I'm just currently not there. So I don't know who this rapper is, but they're giving a punch lesson. To be fair, however, I am a big fan, actually, of these types of gags where the character is actively talking to another. One of my favorite sets of like TikTok / shorts that I knew were these interviews. Were these like interviews with ex-artists. So then it was kind of like so then it was like a joke interview using song lyrics. I don't remember who did it, but like, if, for example, like interview with Taylor Swift, and you ask questions that sort of lead into that. It's kind of like, how do you deal with the haters? And then you get Taylor Swift be like, shit, oh, right, and there's all that stuff, right? Like you get it, and then like those are guys I really like. So having the characters actually, in the way interact with the actual words of a song, I actually do think is a great gag. So I personally approve of it fully, wholeheartedly. In the meantime, they eventually steal from the ATM, I think, and therefore they manage to do it. So good job to that team. The other team's up for elimination. Still no idea who really gets eliminated. There's a bit too many people per team for me to realistically guess. However, it is Minecraft's fault that they proceed to not really do much of anything. So we're gonna go with Minecraft getting eliminated here, because if it made sense. Usually there's not enough votes for it to make sense, but we'll see. Episode 4 is titled Survival the Killers in Area 51. Sure. Okay, that is episode 4 of Up the Tube, and it seems to be a Halloween-themed episode, to a certain degree, because we're in Catchup, nearly everybody's in Catchup. There's a warning at the beginning being like, yo, you know what there is in the show? They do the swearing, and then they do death, and elimination. What do you mean eliminate? They do eliminations in the do you need to warn that? Like, they need to warn that there are gonna be eliminations in this show. What do you think? What? I mean, I get. But yeah, I mean, true. They should, if you're gonna do this warning, it should be at the beginning of the show, because if you're 4 episodes in, you know that there's death and swearing. There's been a bunch of it in the past, and there's gonna continue to be more, right? Yeah, fans for the warning. Okay, let's see if I can figure out what the hell these costumes are. So, Minecraft is bedrock. Vendors, this fella that turns into a mushroom. Yeah. Then there's Top Hat, which, I mean, the band changed it. I'm not sure what they are now. Let's say they're from Mario Odyssey, it's Cap Kingdom. Okay, let's go with that. Vendors, what the hell do you become? Case? That, I don't even know. That's just a rapper, that's one of them. It certainly is one of them, alright? Has got some stuff rolling around in general. Do I want to say a name? Let's say it's the one from the last episode, right? Let's say it's that one, alright? Then there is the water dispenser, who is purple guy. The one for Five Nights at Freddy's. We end up having hot Cheetos. They've turned into the bag for like nacho cheese, nacho Doritos. Yeah, Doritos. Then fridge, not sure. Meanwhile, the Dorito itself has turned into a ninja, I guess. I don't know. I'm trying to see if I can clock them. Water bottle is cosplaying a 6'7". Okay, sure. Then there's also pool noodle's not there. I don't know. Then we end up having our host gets sued, because indeed getting sued is fair, considering you stole the money. I mean, technically it's not the host's fault, but the host did tell them to do it, right? The host was the one that was like, yo, you should go steal. Then they stole from the ATM. But yeah, is Headband cosplaying as YouTube? What is that? I don't even know. Dollars cosplaying is just the devil. Fair enough. The gift card is cosplaying as a different gift card, so they technically remain the same. No idea what Emma's one is. No clue. Then we end up having someone else. And then we end up having ourselves the actual challenge. There's gonna be background noise. Whatever, bro. Flashlight doesn't. You don't have one, right? You don't have a. Do you? Do you have a costume? I don't think you have a costume. Flashlight is too famous, okay? Flashlight is the costume, alright? Flashlight don't need to do no costume. They are the costume, alright? Fair enough. We end up having some debating about water bottle, and then we end up having the do we have the elimination? Where's the elimination? I don't even know where it is. But I will wait. Oh yeah, microwave ends up getting eliminated. Wait. Yes, microwave ends up getting eliminated because of the singular vote. So their alien self, Beep Boops, has been eliminated. Fair enough, but also not fair enough. I think it's a bit unfortunate. They're chopping shit, bro. So a bit unfortunate. I do think that Microwave was one of the more distinguishable characters, so I wouldn't eliminate them when thinking about the health of the show. However, it makes sense that the Microwave will be somebody's least favorite character if they don't like. It's kind of one of those things. It's like you probably shouldn't eliminate the character that's a bit more unique. However, characters that's a bit more unique is gonna have a little bit less liking to them. So that's kind of like the general negative to it. Challenges. Survival the killers in Area 50. Well, no. Actually, not true. You don't go to Area 51. You stay right here, unless we're in Area 51 right now. I don't think so. and you're supposed to survive the killers. Who are the killers? I remember asking the question. The killers, everybody, in the sense where, like, you know, if somebody else is a murder on you, that's, you know, you should just stay alive. And then there's also a bunch of little zombie creatures from presumably the game, and they proceed to go over and chase you, and the characters, you know, continue their classic little debating all around. Yeah, I don't think Pool Noodle has a costume as well. A couple of characters, you know, sometimes, look, fair enough, sometimes a character just ain't bothered. You know, sometimes you just don't want to go into a costume to do a Halloween special episode of Up the Tube. You know, I can relate, right? Speaking of which, one thing that actually I haven't mentioned is the joke that happens every time with Up the Tube, quote unquote, because, like, every time a character gets eliminated, they get sent up the tube in a way. They kind of fly off into space. Though we never get to see the tube, just saying. But I do think that it's a pretty creative thing. Is it probably the reason why we made the entire show? So that we could say that line? Maybe. However, we'll give it the benefit of the doubt, alright? We have the zombie rappers. In general, they're coming. People are dying. A lot of people are actually dying. Oh yeah, Pop-Tart is dressed up as Bendy, by the way. They just don't show up a lot. A test tube, I don't even know what you're trying to be. But they end up going over there. What happens? Headband flies off. Yep. Then we end up having some fellas dying. Just a lot of fellas dying. Some hiding in the bush. Jeff gets them. A lot. There's deaths. Okay, deaths are happening. People are dying. Things are going on. You know, with these kind of more, I guess, action, quote unquote, challenges, is a bit more difficult to properly understand it. And eventually, yet again, this team with Minecraft in it is just bad. It's just a rough team. They just don't do much, you know? Like, they kind of sit there and argue. The other team will at least give it a go, you know? They'll hide up bush, they'll do this, they'll do that, you know? They'll try fighting back, maybe shooting a gun. But this Minecraft team will just sit there, be like, I'm better, no, I'm better, no, I'm better, you're better, I'm better, right? And then it's like, and then they don't do anything, so everybody dies, except for, and Minecraft actually dies last, so they're safe, and therefore that means that everybody else is up for elimination. Who would get eliminated? I don't know, let's say that the one voter is not a fan of 6-7, so therefore they vote out the water bottle because their costume was the 6-7. Yeah, that is episode 4. Let's jump ourselves into episode 5, the modern one, from a couple weeks ago, titled Windows Up. Okay, that is episode 5 of Up the Tube. So, wow, this team remains incompetent. That is unbelievable. They cannot win by accident. They were looking kind of alright. Apparently, Minecraft ditched them to make their own team, which, you know, Mr. Fair host over here shouldn't have allowed. But either way, they end up kind of doing this whole shebang. And they're yet again losing. I think 4th time in a row it is. Truly a bad performance. I mean, like, I don't know. If you're curious, by the way, what actually happened at this elimination is that Pool Noodle alongside Hot Cheetos ended up being the ones tied at 1 vote after the 2 votes for the elimination, and then we ended up having Pool Noodle lose the 1v1 and therefore be eliminated. And then we had the challenge. By the way, this entire episode is Christmas themed for some reason. I'm not exactly sure why, but it wasn't Christmas. But that's the Christmas theme episode. And then we have ourselves the warning at the beginning remains there. The swearing, okay, swearing bad. Apparently, you know, I swear quite a bit. I wonder how much on average I actually swear. Because the thing about me swearing is I don't actually realize it most of the time when I do it. You know, so I don't really know how much I do it, but I feel like I do it a reasonable amount. You know, but look, kids, you gotta learn, all right? You learn the hard way. either way, we end up having a little bit of Christmas caroling, some jingle bells between Hot Cheetos and Water Bottle, showing off their relationship that was mentioned in passing in episode 1. Jingle bell, 6, 7, all the way, whatever the hell they said. I don't know. They said the word Ohio in there as well. Yeah. At the end of doing that, we end up having the challenge, which is a snowball fight. Yes, snowball fight. I am getting deja vu from Battle for Powers, but other than that, we seem to be doing all right. I do think that this environment is better than the one from Battle for Powers, because I know that the Battle for Power one had this sort of feel to it that was kind of weird. About like the fact that the sky was gray to sort of signify snowiness, but like the ground and the background are also gray to signify that there's snow. So there was just gray everywhere, right? And it was really hard to tell what the sky was. But in this one, it seems to be relatively organized, and it's again simplistic backgrounds, but it does its job, right? My real question is, the gift card, why is it a Giphy card? Why does that asset say Giphy card? That's not a team. That's not a team. That's a Giphy card. I not sure why, but that's intriguing. But in general, the characters, they're doing their thing. Weak Case, yet again, just doing their classic tactic. Dude, Weak Case is all talk, no bite. Weak Case is somebody disses them. It's like, oh, I'll fucking shoot you, man. I'm from the hood. Remember, I'm from the wherever. And then then they never actually do anything. Come on. You all talk. You all bark, no bite. Come on, Weak Case. At least Dollar actually will go out of the way to do much of anything when they're pissed, which they're actually extremely pissed in this episode. So, yeah. Anyways, we have a couple of guests appear, such as Molly. Which does some damage and then leaves, and then Minecraft ends up getting their friendo, which is Dartblock, the real one, ends up getting there, and they are officially there. They drop down the tower with their epic skills, and then it's all looking good. Now look at them. So we officially see what their relation is. It seems like the up the tube contestants are just physically smaller than the Battle for Powers contestants, which is a kind of an interesting detail to think about, because like their block is just significantly taller, just significantly larger of a character than the other ones, which I think it's cool. They proceed to leave after dropping the tower. Dollar gets access to the gun because we could feel the rage. We officially decided afterwards, as a rule, that you cannot that if you throw snowball, a snowball gets thrown at you, it doesn't count. Because somebody out can get you out, so that's fair, fair host. For some reason, Dirtball says that it's not a fair host if you let somebody vote after the voting deadline. I mean, yeah, but like, if you think about it, it's how many votes were there after the voting deadline? Because if there was only one vote after the voting deadline, and then you let it, then that's fair, because everybody involved got the same thing, got the same outcome. If more than one person voted after the voting deadline, then one person's vote allowed it, and the other ones didn't, then that's not fair, right? Because there's bias going on in there. So I don't really know. But either way, we end up having the 4v3. Again, it was looking like the team was gonna eventually show Team Second might have a bit of a chance, but they eventually get out. But yeah, everybody's up for elimination except Minecraft, because okay, I'm sorry. We definitely just forgot Minecraft because they weren't up for Elim the other time. And then we need to come up with a reason why Minecraft is safe last second. So we're in the comments, Minecraft's in his own team. Because he's not, though. He's just not. He's specific. He leaves, but he doesn't leave to form his own team. That's not an official thing. He leaves for the sake of, not following the plan. He goes flying solo. And then if you remember, it was a 4v3. Right? They even say it's a 4v3. And one of the 4 people that team is considering is Minecraft. The 4v3 Minecraft is actively part of that 4. So, that's just not, it's just not true. You know, like Minecraft, as far as the contestants of the show are aware, Minecraft was not on his own team. You know, there's just no way that can be true. So, yeah, I don't know. And either way, I don't think Minecraft should be on his own team because teams are one are bad. Because if they lose, they're just out automatically, right? Because I mean, like, you know, okay, if Minecraft was on his own team, he wasn't safe. All right, he wasn't safe. Got hit, so that would mean that he's eliminated. Just saying, that would have to be the case. Just saying, you know. But how could he be safe? Tell me. How could he be safe? He got hit, you know. So that would make him out. He's the only member of the team. So tell me. You know, I feel like this is not a solution that has been thought through. But that is Up the Tube. It's a relatively relaxed series. It's interesting to see a series from Yourboitayy properly start off with the more modern animation style. But in general, I do think that some of the criticisms that were in episode 1 were mildly improved. You know, some characters talk about a higher pitched voice and stuff, and I think some characters' personalities are a bit more defined. But in general, I still think that too many characters speak with the same type of intonation, with the same type of vibe, and it makes the vibe one note, I think, in general. Both for this and for maybe the other shows. We'll see. Because there's some more releases from Yourboitayy to watch, indeed. Because we are going to start, we're going to watch, first we're going to watch episode 1 of a new series, apparently, which is titled Munch. Alright, no idea what it is, but we're going to Munch 1, which is titled You Thought I Was Feeling You? Here we go. Alright, that is Munch 1. No idea why it's called Munch. No idea much of anything. I don't think this is getting other episodes, to be honest. It says that apparently the winners just win, so fair enough. And we have, however, you know, I would say an improvement. Personally, I think that this is a bit better. Because you see, it's like there's just a little bit more variety. You know, this is what I mean with vocal variety, right? It kind of like, if you compare like Up the Tube 1 and 2 to like this, it's like you see that like there's a little bit more defined personality, right? Not that the character in Up the Tube didn't have any, but it was more, but again, it's all based on a template, right? You swap from a template. Here, the characters don't all necessarily have the same personality. The voice is a little bit different, right? In a different type of way, instead of just being high pitch or low pitch, right? And like it does a little bit more variety, right? Even a character like Clock is just where, you know, speaking in a different gimmick, you know, a speaking gimmick is just not something that has happened in this show. And this is something that the show is doing, right? And even though I'm treating it more as like an example rather than a proper show, because this is apparently not in another episode, it's like it's relatively a solid thing to have, you know? Like, I think that there's an improvement. You can see the nice characters and the mean characters, they're consistent, they've got their voice, and you see like this pipe thing is gruffer voice, right? This S-Boss thing is a less rough voice, you know? Like, this Stridex or whatever you're called, like a handband. What is that? Is like a shaky voice. You know, all this stuff is there, and you know, like I get it, and overall, I see that there is some potential in it. Of course, you know, it was early days. We're hoping to be able to improve, but I think, you know, if these elements can get added on and get focalized on in you know, future environments, future episodes, I mean, maybe, okay, well, the thing about making a future episode, of course, it does arrive at a tonal shift at the end of the day. You know, like I guess if a show's vibe is one note, that is a problem, but then if you change the note, that's kind of weird. But at least for like future shows, you know, having that little bit of a focus on kind of like just you know, getting the characters to feel like different characters, absolutely, it is a sign. I feel like this is some early days. I feel like these characters, at least to my honest perception of it, like there is a possibility of like, oh, is it placebo because I want it? But no, I think generally looking at it, I do think that these characters feel like more properly different characters than the one from Up to Tube. There's work to do, but like in general, I do think that this is a more improvement there, right? So I am personally an enjoyment of this. Should this get more episodes? I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it was fine. It was a balance beam challenge, but that is that. Alright, we're gonna go to Battle for Powers, because Battle for Powers, the mainline series, has gotten episode 17 releasing 1 day ago, so we're gonna have to watch it. It's titled It All Comes Crashing Down. As a reminder for what happened last time, we had ourselves a very long set of chats heading into an elimination where the eliminated contestant ended up being whiteboard. Then we ended up going into the elimination area where we had some rejoins. Apparently the rejoins each challenge 2 people were eliminated, and they can help out their friends, and then the final round 2 remain to battle off for rejoins. So there's a lot of mini challenges that theoretically should happen. Let's see how exactly this will play out in episode 17. It all comes crashing down. Okay, that is episode 17 of Battle for Powers. So, this episode had a kind of complicated situation that it put itself in, It gave itself that system of the mini challenges with a double elimination in each challenge, meaning that like you need to split the episode up into a lot of different. It creates a different type of writing experience than you do, right? This kind of, it's not a bracket style, but it's very similar to bracket style in the same way where like, instead of there being one big match, there's a lot of mini matches, right? So it's an interesting thing that we don't get to see that much, because nearly no object show does stuff like this, So, in general, it was intriguing to see. And you know what? I believe that I'm pleasantly surprised. Episode manages to pull it off in good time, It manages to do all of this section with 12 minutes of time, which is, at the end of the day, perfectly suitable for an episode. If we're gonna do an episode with entirely rejoined, then this is about how long I would probably want it to be. I would say it does its job relatively well. With the characters that it has, we get to see them, some interactions, all that stuff. We get to see who we're rooting for, some of the helpers, what are helping, the reasonings. We get to see all the characters, their lines, right? Because of the way this bracket style system works, this means that there's an official loss moment for every character, right? Which means that every character eventually has a moment, right? So it's all, so like I would say that I would say that this is a relatively successful little episode, which is very nice considering, of course, Battle for Powers has been a series that has massively struggled with actually getting challenges done in due time. I mean, it had that one snow challenge that lasted for 4 episodes, and then now, even here we're getting a contestant count back up by 2, by the way, since 2 people joined. So like, this is just not a show that's ever ending. This is not a show that's ending at this point. But it's rather intriguing. So, what are the actual challenges that are taking place? We start off with the challenge being to cross the sea. It turns out that whiteboard is the solution by just being extremely powerful. They end up being able to throw everybody else across. So they're pretty much entirely choosing about who doesn't rejoin with them. They choose Roblox. and therefore Roblox is outside whiteboard. Then next challenge is to create some food. They're debating on what food to bring. Yep, Sonic correctly points out none of them think of chili dogs, which is crazy. I mean, making a chili dog is like complicated. You know, I mean, for them, who since you know they're in a grassland, but like in general, they're kind of doing it interesting. One thing I also do like is that these challenges are these mini challenges, they are different, right? Like the first challenge is the last one to do X. This challenge everyone does and it's a rating, right? So it is also giving itself variety within the mini challenges, right? Like I think that considering it's a relatively unique structure, I do believe that it's managed to pull this unique structure and do it well. So absolutely props for that. That is some nice stuff. We end up having a 8K. We got an 8 out of 10. Sonic's ratings, they're kind of useless. Everything's a 7. Every food ever made. If Sonic eats a food, it's getting a 7. All right, this is just the way that it goes. All right. And then the two fellas that don't give any food because they couldn't make any, which is the TV, who's still dying, and the computer, end up both being fully off, and therefore they don't rejoin. That's the second challenge. The third challenge is get to the top of a very large platform, which is one of the previous challenges. Then we end up having some fellas get up there. Of course, Fortnite's teleporting powers allow them to get up there quite quickly alongside people who can throw themselves. Then 8-Ball decides to climb up with Blue Controller out of help. Blue Controller is getting a lot of general help. Blue Controller, you know, very much so playing to the tactic of being like, yo, I was the first one out. I gotta kind of clutch myself up by just generally not being anybody's enemy, right? Because that's the thing, Blue Controller is anybody's enemy because, well, first of all, they've hung out with them a lot, of course, in the elimination area, I presume. And then, you know, they just weren't in the show long enough to really cause a ruckus. They were just kind of there, right? Which means that in general they're able to ask for favors and get them, which is rather nice. So yeah. The red ornament and remote don't manage to make it up there because nobody could throw the ball, and the remote didn't want to do that. Didn't remote have the vocoded voice? I was trying to think about it because I remember I was complaining about a vocoded voice in my Battle for Powers chat that I found really hard to understand. But I feel like the remote voice has been changed to a low pitch rather than a vocoder. Am I correct? I think I'm correct, right? It's way easier to understand if so. Yeah, it is. It's actually possible to know what remote is saying, which is a hallelujah. But that is pretty cool. Fourth challenge: bring anything special. If you like it, then Sonic will say if they like it. The two people, the items they don't like are for elimination. Kind of a very specific way of wording it, which is not great, because this implies that Sonic will exactly not like two things. You know, it doesn't account for the factoid that Sonic might just not like more than two things, or might just not like less, you know, might like everything. So it's a bit suspicious here. Those are the types of thinkings, those are the types of challenge explanations, which is kind of like, hold on, you gotta remember, there's a good tip. When you're writing a challenge, you need to write your challenge explanation fitting in edge case scenarios, right? Because otherwise you are kind of spoiling your challenge, you know? It's kind of like if it goes like, hey, yo, there will be, for example, if there's like a competition, right? And it's like there are 4 rounds specifically, right? But then like something's going on with it, then there are 4 rounds of massive, and then it's like, well, hold on, but that could tie, for example, right? You know, it's kind of like one of those things. So you kind of have to think about scenarios that you might not have actually written when you're writing a challenge explanation, right? So you got to think about that. Anyways, a bunch of other people randomly appear to help out. Friggin' Blue Controller, okay, sure. Fortnite ends up going over to the store to get a diamond. They do get a diamond, however, unfortunately, this fella, which is this the first character to be voice acted not by Tay? I don't I don't know, but like it's a reasonable possibility. I mean, like, of course, there's characters voiced by Texas Beach, like Nintendo Switch or whatever. But like in general, that's kind of interesting. They end up being this thing when they teleport away. Then we have oh yeah, the bowling ball. The bowling ball decided to go underground. Yeah, the bowling ball went underground to fetch for an item. Wait, hold on. Yeah, they went underground to fetch for a diamond because they saw Fortnite go overground to fetch for a diamond. Okay, sure. And then there's somebody down there, Bedrock. Okay, cool. We're using the Halloween costume to warn them that the mines are dangerous. Okay, fair enough. Then we end up having some interesting things. 8-Ball takes a fish, but that's funny. The fish response, the fish talking is really funny. But we end up having the diamond, which is allowed. Then we end up having blue controller ends up having a Nerf gun, which ends up being not sure about. 8-Ball's fish. Sonic is a bit disappointed by it, by the fish. I guess fish isn't necessarily the most epic thing. Then Fortnite didn't have anything, right? Yeah. So Fortnite didn't rejoin. And then I think Fortnite. Wait a minute. Hold on. I'm trying to. 8-Ball, Fortnite don't rejoin, I think, right? So then that leaves the final two, which are approval, which is blue controller and bowling ball. And then we end up having an epic blue controller monologue being like, nobody cared about me, nobody know me, and I spent years locked away. You are not gonna let me down. And then, but you bowling ball goes like, Lamau, I don't care, Bozo, as characters in this show tend to do. But after their battle, they accidentally break the platform and fall at the same time. So good ending. They both make it in, and they get an immunity ticket each that they can all use. So alongside that, then somebody else also has, and then the other rest was show also gets it. I like half the cast at this point has an immunity ticket. I'm gonna be for real. I've not managed to keep track of them. It's kind of difficult to keep track of that stuff. But Sticker remains being a menace. And then we end up having some team shuffling as Sasha's team ends up being a bit too small. So they decide that they want to join forces with another team. After debating which team they should go, they end up deciding to go to the Stickers team. So they agree to go there. And they eventually allow them in, so they now are like a double the size of a team. Then we end up going into the challenge. The video gets cut off, which implies that the episode was supposed to have the challenge here in this episode. Right after Sonic goes like, no, I need it. Your challenge boring. I want red potion challenge. Interesting. Okay. Alright. Me when the co-host better than the regular host, for real. Hey, to be fair, I mean, the IRL challenge was pretty cool. Right, that's the challenge that Red Potion hosts. I don't know how many challenges, but like the stuff like the IRL challenge, right? I mean, that was cool challenge. Red Potion challenge, some of the other challenges. I mean, like, it was all, some of the challenges were pretty cool. So I can actually kind of agree though. But yeah, the video gets cut off, which implies that it was supposed to be all in the same episode, but then it didn't. Presumably because of the realization that it was as Delton will say, it was taking too long. It's another split here as episode. What was supposed to be one episode ends up turning into 3. Yeah, I mean, like, in the grand scheme of things, right? We do still have a little bit of an issue of, overwriting, right? Where it's like, I actually, to be 100% honest, I actually don't mind the way this current split of episodes goes. 16, 17, and 18. I think it makes sense, right? Elimination, comeback episode plus elimination, then a rejoin challenge with 2 double rejoins, that's important. And then, regular challenge to return to normality, right? Like, it all feels like it makes sense. However, like, even though I do actually not mind to split it off, I think it makes sense. It is still definitely, you still gotta be very wary of the overwriting, because I mean, like, sure, it turns out that splitting the episode 3 ways is fine, but you didn't mean to do that, and the fact that that the original intention was for episode 16 to be about, like, what, 40 minutes? Right, which is presumably how long it would last, how long 16, 17, and 18 will last to put together, is like, it's a bit insane, isn't it? Like, it's so much time. So you kind of gotta start thinking about that a bit more in general. But yeah, overall, that's Battle for Powers. I think that this episode, it did not have an easy task, but I think it managed to deliver on it pretty well. And I will say that I think this is one of the most solid episodes of Battle for Powers, I would say. A bunch of the episodes have been pretty solid. I would say, like, post that kind of, slog that I would unfortunately say was those snow episodes. I would say that it's like it's getting to a spot where I am a bit more satisfied with it, I would say. I would say that, we've improved. I would say that, like, stuff like episode 14 was creative, episode 15 was cool, this episode was nice, or episode 16, I'm kind of filler, but like, in general, like, after that slog, I would say this show, it has in general been resuming itself a little bit, getting a little bit more creative with its channels, a little bit more doing that. It just has to find a way to properly, it has to get into a rhythm. Basically what I'm saying, it has to get into a rhythm. It has to try to figure out a rhythm with a consistent length of script that can cause an episode that can get done in a reasonable amount of time. And then have some creative challenge ideas written from there, right? It just has to get into a rhythm, because it's struggling to get with a rhythm. You can tell by the fact that the contestant count has barely gone down in 8 episodes, right? Like, it's just kind of, it needs to find a rhythm. But I think that if this show can really find a rhythm, I do think that there's enough challenge ideas there to where I think we can have some cool stuff, especially as, of course, the characters will improve through time, I do believe. So I will say, it has to find its rhythm. There's work to do. However, I will say I do genuinely believe in the potential here of this show. Even from looking at Munch, I also thought that the characters there has some potential. Even though Munch's not happening, but I do, the act of constructing a character, I do think that there's potential there. So I do generally believe. I do think that we can have some solid improvements here. And I'll be interested to see what the next steps are, because I'll be honest, I have faith. I believe. Next thing. Whatever it is. Alright, now anything else in this video is honestly just a bonus, but we're going to be doing some of the requests that I have that are relatively quick from the ancient times when they were originally requested. Starting off with one series titled First Boot. Alright, First Boot seems to be roughly a Nake-ish type show. Created by It's a Name, which is created with 1.6 thousand subscribers. So far, this series has had 6 installments of it released, all of them at a minute or under. Let's see what this is all about, starting with The First Boot, released a month ago. Here we go. Okay, so it seems like the concept of this is we're looking at an eliminated contestant view. It's kind of like if we got, I guess, like a random short about what the hell these people who are getting who are in the TLC, type place are in, which is interesting. It really does feel like the LOL, the locker losers. It's a box, there's a window, and there's gonna be people in it. So it's like, at this point, you can just make kind of like a sitcom there, right? You can just make a skit. Each episode as another person drops by, and then you just end up having a little bit of a skit as they have a conversation or whatever the hell, right? Like, that's all possible. So that's interesting. I'm curious how it's actually going to evolve, though. Because, of course, this video is made for the pun's sake. Let's see. The second loss. Here we go. Okay, I basically don't have any time to talk about these episodes. However, let's take this moment to quickly talk about it. So, I do like how this is animated. It gives off some interesting vibes. Style relatively unique. It's also 480p. It's in 4:3. These icons at the end, they're very reminiscent of like Roblox. And in general, we end up kind of having this vibe that does manage to, I think, emulate Naked relatively well. But it's not emulate, it's kind of inspired off of Naked relatively well. But overall, I mean, I do find that this concept is somewhat interesting, seeing what the eliminated contestants are thinking. Kind of like, are they going to root for somebody that's going to help them try to escape? Yeah, probably. That's what they would do, right? They're looking at the show. There's not much else for them to look at, right? So then it's like, do we want a friend eliminated? Do we want somebody useful eliminated? Any of that stuff. Like, it's all interesting to think about. I don't know how much we can do with this concept, I'm going to be honest. I'm looking at this concept, I'm like, is there that much we can do? I don't know. I'm starting to kind of doubt it, but we'll see. The other team lost. The third team. Here we go. So it's like a fancy TLC. It's got like a room in it, like a side room that's like cool and stuff. Yo, what is that? But yeah, the boot has gotten, progressively a little bit more pissed as they're watching the show. Again, yeah, that makes sense. You start to kind of lose your temper, especially as you just missed the elimination. No idea who actually got eliminated. It seems like it might have been this, whoever this was, like this jail fella, maybe. But we'll have to see. It's interesting. We kind of get to see maybe the setup to the next challenge, right, with this flagpole. It's intriguing that we can kind of like half see what's going on in the actual show, like a little tiny tidbits of it, are appearing here and there, and like all that stuff's there. I am intrigued. I'm curious what this is. Is that even floor? That almost looks like water, right? It's almost like golden water. But no, I think that might just be the see-through floor. I don't know what that is. We'll see if we find out, because the fourth floor. Here we go. Hold on a damn minute. What was that? Hold on a damn minute. Wait a minute. Aren't they just outside at that point? That's the top. That's not a win. They could just jump out, right? Surely. What is prevent? Are they dumb? Surely you can just jump out at that point. Huh? Okay, that's interesting. We end up having Acid to get eliminated, presumably because they wanted to get them eliminated, so we did eventually get them eliminated. But yeah, there's a lot of floors, it seems, so that's kind of intriguing. But maybe it's like a floor per team. I don't know. But dude, what is going on? So they're like flying planes and stuff, and then eventually one of the planes seems to crash down on them. Is there any frame that we get to see? Because it kind of cuts off. No, not really, just a plane. And then a whole new team with whole new people that you've never seen before appears. Look, maybe they were just goated at challenges, alright? Maybe they were just goated at challenges, but we'll see which one of them is going to join, alright? Because, we're doing the Nake thing of inventing characters. Alright, the fifth race, here we go. You see, one of the things which I like about these sort of Nake-esque shows, including this, right, is that it really shines in an area which object shows tend to struggle at, which is background details, right? Background movements, background details are something that object shows tend to not really do because it's hard to write into a script, right? However, in these mini shows, you really need to make these details important all of the time. From these telephone lines falling in the background, right, to just simply the conversations and things that are happening behind. It really teaches you to, pay attention to the surrounding of beyond just the character which is talking, because all of it is important to some degree, right? And it makes it quite original because it's so, different to what is going on usually, right? And I think that it's very nice to see it, and in a way I do hope that this stretch of shows kind of like the Nate the Snake, kind of like this, right, that people watch. I hope that in a way in the shows that they'll make, it'll encourage them to add more of these kind of background sort of details, because they are really nice. They make something feel so much more complete, just having a detail that's not in text. We are apparently digging out with acid, maybe, but we'll see. Telephone lines are falling. The walkie-talkie might lose connections, maybe. I don't know. The 6th tower. Here we go. I want you guys to hit the 6th tower. This guy's suspicious. I don't know. He's out here talking right as he's about to get eliminated. Proceeds to get all up in walkie-talkie's personal space. Just walk. Which one? Yeah, it's walk. Proceeds to get all up in Walkie's personal space and not allow him to comply. All of this, I don't know about it. And I don't know, this shovel's looking suspicious, but either way, I mean, they're going to be used as a tool for the digging for the now. This other team, which has never lost, has now lost. I do believe we've seen at least a semblance of this before, because we did see a shit ton of splinters on that human fella a couple episodes ago, so that could be Cactus, maybe. Something's going on, who knows. But yeah, and we tend to seem to be voting for characters which are useful, so maybe water? I don't know. But either way, this is cool. This is cool. I like it quite a bit. It's I wasn't too sure, how much it was gonna be able to do, because I heard the concept that it was kind of show from eliminated location. I was like, okay, yeah, well, how much can you really do with that? Turns out, yeah, you can do a fair amount. As the character dropped by, you can kind of get hints and bits about what was going on in the competition. You can, connect with the characters a little bit differently, see how the escape paths are going. This elimination area is pretty fucking fancy as well. It has a freaking golden elevator, right, and all that stuff. So it's looking all pretty interesting. And I think it's interesting, and I sort of get less upset at it than did we even make, because with this, it's the details about challenges and stuff don't matter as much, because it's not lore elements that we're actively supposed to be following. We're supposed to be following the eliminated people. So in general, who's still in the show or not is kind of different. Whereas Nate, we're actively supposed to follow who's in the show, and it made that way too ambiguous. This, if it's way too ambiguous, that's fair enough. And it's also a little bit, just kind of getting a bit more used to the Nate style, which to be honest, I did need to get a bit used to that Nate's way of doing things, because it is kind of weird. It's kind of off. But overall, enjoyable little idea. It's taking the concept, it's doing things with it. Not sure what it's gonna do next, but sure, why not? Seems fun. Let's keep it moving. I'll be definitely on the lookout for whatever the 7th is called. All right, next thing, if there is one. Alright, next up, we're going to go to another ancient request by Rinamations. Yes, because Rinamations recommended me to take a look at a lot of shows. And I was like, well, okay, can't take a look at all this. But you know what? I'll take a look at the shows which were on that big list of recommendations, which are from Rinamations themselves, okay? Because that feels right. So that will be 2 shows. Which means that we're going to start off here with the first one, which is a 3-episode one titled The Miniature Object Show, or TMOS. Has 3 episodes. They're roughly around 1 minute 20 in length. The first one is titled the 25-second episode. So, trust me. All right, here we go. Oh, okay. The miniature, and it's all super small things. So an arm is hosting, or whatever that is, and then the contestants are all super small shapes. So then it's a triangle, or so then there's a triangle, there's brackets, there's a circle, and then there's also whoever ends up being safe. So Wither Skeleton Skull is what they're called. Brackets, Spicy Dorito, and Gray are their official names. But that's interesting. So you make it as like a super small kind of icon, and therefore you can do the challenges kind of zoomed out. That's cool, you know. Okay, I mean we'll see if it can evolve on this concept. Episode 2, the very rushed episode. Here we go. Alright, it doesn't evolve on that concept too much. Kind of unfortunate. However, if you think about it, if it just kept doing that concept, it probably just turns into like a complicated algebra you know, algebra. But we end up having elimination that, considering the episode's 118 in length, the fact that this elimination has like 30 seconds of suspense, you do not need that. You do not need that much suspense. You know, it's just not necessary. Characters each get their first lines and also proper zoomed in asset. And we end up having the challenger, which is to speak. Dorito manages to speak because they were laughing at the Wither Skeleton Skull, who tried to speak and couldn't. The brackets, each one has an individual voting code, so I'm curious if they both count towards the same character, or maybe they're different characters. That's intriguing for us to see, but we're gonna need to find out in due time. Gray indeed got eliminated, by the way. But yeah, in terms of how these assets actually are, they're a little kind of off. I mean, I don't know about these brackets. Gonna be for real, you know, the whole thing about a bracket is that it's super kind of straight line. This one kind of looking like bones, but you know, we'll see. Let's go into episode 3, which is titled "How the hell can we separate you two?" I don't know. Let's go. Okay, to be brutally honest with you, I kind of don't know what's going on. However, it's very clear the host of the show doesn't know what's going on either. The things are just kind of happening, and the host is going like, sure. Going like, sure. Going like, okay, alright. You know, they're very unsure about what's going on. Anyways, for some reason, right which the right bracket was always right, I guess. And that's like the gimmick. Ends up knowing the votes, knows that the left bracket is eliminated. And therefore we end up separating them because the Dorito decides that, look, I don't care about none of this connection. I'm just gonna go, and then they explode. So yeah, for that they're safe. However, they decide to give that safe to the Wither Skeleton Skull because then get to do match. So charitable. And now we get to vote, use the voting codes. I love the fact that you don't need to put in a left bracket anymore in the voting code because there's no more left bracket. So you just need to put B right bracket, which is like hilarious. That is really good. But yeah, it's doing a couple of little smart things. In a way, I sort of wish, however, that it kept itself a bit on the miniature theme, because I do think that it is a cool theme. It should try to, I think, you know, utilize a little bit more, because they sort of gave up on the miniature theme after episode 1, and it just kind of become a show that happens in 30 seconds, right? Like, it's just kind of, it's become not much, when I think that it could, you know, try to take a look at the miniature theme and properly, you know, try to do something with it in the future. No idea if this is cancelled, of course. Neither of these two series have had episodes in a long time, but oh well. Anyways, it's time for the other show from Rinamations, which is titled AFCW, which I'm not sure what it stands for. The episode is titled OMG, You're So Annoying. Here we go. Alright, that is episode 1 and the only episode of AFCW, which stands for Attack for Creative World, which is an interesting subtitle. I've never heard Attack. That's interesting. But, yeah, you're fighting for a creative world of your own, which is interesting. I could see some positives for that prize. I kind of vibe with it. Now, there is one tip. There is one major tip that I have to give this show. It's fucking relax. Chill the fuck out. You got like you're making an object show. You're not running the 50-meter sprint. That's why are we doing things at the speed of light? Like, it's going just so fast. Hold on. Okay, you want to chat? Hear me out. So, we start off with the host, which is already not good, usually. You usually want to introduce the contestants and then the host later. So, we start off already skipping the entire pre-WOF, okay? Then we immediately start off with the introduction of it, okay? So we introduce the prize so by 40 seconds, already forming teams, okay? We introduce the host immediately, so we skip the pre-waffle, and then we're immediately starting off teams. So with 40 seconds, we start making teams. Teams are done getting made in 20 seconds. It takes 20 seconds for a team. I like the team forming in the set. Like, it could be fast. I like the team forming, I guess, in terms of, the UI and stuff, but 20 seconds is way too fast. I don't know any of these characters yet. And you know what's the crazy part about it? I'm pretty sure there's 3 teams, and one team we just don't see. We just don't see the creation of it. So that's kind of crazy. Okay, so then it's done all of this stuff in speedrun. So then obviously it's gonna do an intro. So how long is this intro? 5 seconds? No, the intro is longer than the episode. No, the intro. This intro lasts for 1 minute and 10 seconds. It's almost as long as the episode. The episode's like 1 minute 30 or something. Oh, like, that is insane. Again, the intro's fine. It's just, what is this time management, We're taking our sweet ass time with the intro, and then we're doing the show as if we're speedrunning. It's like, what? Challenge is to fly to the center of the galaxy. Apparently the center of the galaxy just means at any point in space. So yeah, we kick the soccer ball somehow hard enough to where you end up in space. Sure. And then another team shoots a laser beam, which happens to work, maybe. Although, wouldn't that shoot? I mean, that would lose. But the problem is, wouldn't that would shoot the laser gun to space? That wouldn't shoot the. That would shoot the laser to space, not the laser gun. So, I mean, I'm not sure if I necessarily agree with the logic there, but they're apparently safe, which means that the other team, which didn't have, how dare they didn't manage to do the challenge in 12 seconds. This is scandalous. Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know if this shows, ever planned to have more. In general, I feel like it looks relatively fine. It manages to do movement, I think, to a nice way. I mean, of course, it's got a little bit of, kind of like flip a clip FPS jank to it, but like in general, I could understand it. Voice acting was fine. It just needs to, be longer than 3 seconds per thing, because I can't get connected to the characters, I can't get connected to the story, can't even get connected to a challenge if there's just not enough time for it to happen. Right, so that's absolutely the main recommendation. Just kind of like, if you're keeping it moving, take the time to get it right. Don't just speedrun, because then it's not going to be satisfying for anything involved, right? So, yeah. Okay, that's all for the Rinamations shows, as far as I'm aware. Again, if there's a next thing, we'll look at it. Alright, next up we're going to go over to a side channel of a creator we know, so that's why I never covered this, 78 card, because I was wondering where this was. So it's because it's on a side channel, so it doesn't technically count. 78 card made a side channel titled NonCompetitionObjectSStudios, 52 subscribers on this channel, and we have got ourselves episode 1 of the Objects of Escape, a very teased, I believe, Stranger Things inspired inspired object show. I have not watched Stranger Things, so this is going to be an entirely new plotline for me. We're going to go watch this, released, of course, a month ago. Welcome to the Town of Bats. Here we go. Okay, so, that is episode 1 of the Objects of Escape. Before I start the episode, I gotta, preface a couple little things. First of all, I want to apologize. Should have covered this earlier. I didn't spot it on the side channel. Gonna be 100% for real, because, usually I check for episodes for previously covered creators by checking on the subscriptions tab. It wasn't there because it was on the side channel, so I completely missed it. My bad. And the second thing, this is a Stranger Things inspired show. It's a Stranger Things influenced show, and therefore it's important for me to point out that I have zero knowledge of Stranger Things. I have no idea how anything in Stranger Things works or goes or is. I don't know the plot of it at all. It's just not something that's in my bubble, okay? So, I have no frame of reference from how different this is thematically, plot-wise, story-wise, element-wise, character-wise to Stranger Things, so keep that heavily in mind. I will treat this as if it were fully original writing, okay? However, I am fully aware of the possibility that it might be taken from Stranger Things, okay? Let's go with that. Anyways, we have ourselves a show here as, our fella ends up getting introduced as our main character ends up getting introduced here as this little ball here ends up getting introduced as our main character before the cold open of this mysterious black goop fella who seems to live in some upside down world that seems to be going on in some sort of goop area. They seem to enter a house from their upside down state and manage to sort of go through it in a sense, and they manage to take the opportunity to eventually murder the Christmas box, okay, which happens to be one of the friends for this fella. We get ourselves the open intro, which I actually am quite a fan of. I like it. And we get to see a little bit of what is going on. So, our main character, our protagonist here, which I should really know the name, ends up talking to Lily, alright, which is, what is it? Do we hear your name? I'm getting pissed. How do we not know your name? Really? What? Oh, no, hold on. Give me a second. What are you called? I need to find... you're just called Ball. Okay, cool. Alright, I was trying to find out because nobody ever said your name. But anyways, they're chatting to Lily. They seem to, at least they have a crush on Lily to some degree because they seem to want to ask her out at some point. We don't really know who Lily is, but they seem to be good friends. They're talking, they're on the phone. It's the 80s, by the way. We end up getting the discovery of the murder with the goo. Then we end up that it's apparently a big day in the delivery office, and then we end up having we have our little bit of a mean boss and a co-worker that actually wants to know what it's about. We end up doing a lot of deliveries until, of course, we reach the delivery at the house of the murder, right? Because it's not that large of a town. And it seems to cause him a bit of a headache until he decides the next day, it seems, that he is going in. He has decided that, this house made me feel weird. I'm gonna go there, which is, debatable survival instincts. I would much rather report it to the police. I feel it is the hold on a minute. Okay. Alright, status check here for a moment. Okay. Alright. Hear me out. If you see a house, okay, that's giving you a headache, and the house looks all gooey and stuff, right, and bloody, let's say, because it's a real life example, okay? Would you go in? No. Not saying you don't gotta do anything. Like, go call somebody, right? Go be like, police, just what you do, right? But then, like, you don't go in there yourself. That's a bad idea. You don't even have weapon. You don't got enough. You're going in there unarmed. To do what? You, the guy is just going there for vibes. What is he trying to solve? Does he think the headaches are because they left the oven on? And they say, oh shit, I'll turn off the oven in the goopy house. What? I don't know if I'm understanding this line of logic. I just don't know if this is a thing a person would realistically consider doing. I mean, maybe. I wouldn't, but yeah. Anyway, they seem to have dropped by a hole that happens to be there, as the Koopas left. And they get a peek into the underworld, I'm gonna call it the underworld, until the goop fella firmly shoves them away, and then they proceed to go out there, and they're feeling very bad, and they're about to pass out. And we end up asking the lady to talk, so that way they can presumably ask her out. However, we end up having Christmas box diary. Say things. I fainted after dizziness, saw weird hallucinations, and I swear I heard other people at my house. Sometimes when I sleep, I hear something, and then when I open my eyes, it's gone. Which is, of course, similar to what Ball here believes to be hearing. To be seeing, oh, it's a hallucination, right? All that stuff. Because they don't necessarily have a proper belief that it's real, okay? Then the episode ends. At a solid spot. Shout out to the name of the episode in the credits being the wrong name. But we have ourselves the episode. What do I think of the more technical aspects of it? Voice acting, I would say, is kind of depend on the person. However, on average, I would say it's of a sufficient quality. In terms of animation, I would say that it's dependent. To be honest, there's a couple of moments where the movements did not feel super organic. However, sometimes they did. Kind of like that opening scene with the Christmas box battle, right? Sometimes it felt a little bit weird because, like, for example, the fella just kind of pops in on screen. But the thing about it is that, okay, yeah, you're supposed to be teleporting, right? But the thing about a teleport is for it to look clean, it has to do a fade in. If the guy literally just pops in, that doesn't look like a teleport. That just looks like edited in. Right, so that's why you gotta kind of give it a bit more transition when somebody's teleporting, for example, right? But yeah, sometimes they end up being good. In general, I would say that on average, animation ends up being fine. Audio-wise, the music, I would say, is probably the part I'm a little bit disappointed by. The music selection for a show this level, I would expect it to be a bit more serious. It's kind of just BFDI songs, and then if they're playing at a volume that's too loud, there is a level of audio editing done to the music. Like, it does vary at the volume. However, it doesn't go low enough when somebody's talking. It's still a bit too loud, and then it feels like it's completely tone deaf in a way, the music itself. Like, I'm sorry, we're doing this massive important scene, right, of them meeting the enemy, and then we're getting this kind of like intense music. Like, I feel like it should be a more tense music rather than an intense, like, sort of electronics, right? I feel like the vibes are not quite getting matched here. But in general, I would say a bit disappointed by that. I would hope for some more careful music selection next time, because I do think that, with these kind of more story proper heavy non-competition shows, audio can play such an important factor. It's really underrated, and I feel like it was kind of an overlooked part of this episode, probably the most overlooked part of this episode. So absolutely, my main recommendation heading into the next episodes is really try to get songs that fit in the vibe of the moment. Try to find those tracks. Like, even object shows, there's a lot of variety. Like, there's a lot of variety in the OSC soundtrack. Like, you can get some stuff, all right? You gotta scrounge around for sure, but I do really think that we can get some stuff here that will work, because I'm not too satisfied by it currently. That is the Objects of Escape 1. Apologies for taking a look at it so late. Again, if there's another thing, we'll take a look at it. Alright, I can confirm this will be the last series that we'll be taking a look at today. We're going over to another one of the olden requests to take a look at Jestergelatin's channel, or Kilkefall, with 247 subscribers. The thing that we have been requested to see is none other than BFTUDS, okay, which is a little series with 3 episodes so far, all of them ranging about 2 minutes. So yeah, they all released it roughly about a month ago, so we're gonna watch it as was requested. Here we go. Okay, that is BFTUDS 1, which stands for Battle for the Ugly Disgusting Sainsbury's. Okay, cool. So honestly, I could tell, but I read the description. I got the message from there that the way that this show's dialogue was looking was feeling very organic, right? In the way where characters were talking on top of each other. And of course you can have characters talk on top of each other in scripted. It's very hard, obviously. Which means that the only way for this to realistically be possible is if it's recorded in a voice chat. This gives off massive vibes of a voice chat episode because, as you can tell, the characters interrupt each other, talk over each other, but not in a scripted way, in kind of thing where they make random sound stuff. So yeah, it's a show recorded in a VC, and I believe it's probably the first that we've seen an object has to be recorded in this manner. At least there's not another one that I can immediately remember. So that makes it a relatively unique show. And does it make it? Is it an interesting possibility? I mean, I think it is an interesting possibility. To have it like this, because like you can really embrace the improv with it. There's a reason why those kind of like Discord, even like Got Talent stuff sort of works, because like you can kind of embrace the improv that plays. So if you got the soft friend group that is committed to the bit of recording it and is down to sort of improv up some lines and like proper do it, I think it can create some funny stuff. So yeah, and I think about it, there's Battle for Obama Hamburger that is technically, it's not a voice chat, it's a voice real life. So like different thing, but like yeah, I think it's intriguing. Anyways, we end up having ourselves our contestants, which are very random things. There's like a thing. There's a diamond, a thing. There's a whatever the hell this is. Sapphire. There's an emerald, sapphire. Then there's Margoldy. Then there's a blowing point, and then there's druggy, and then there's profile, and then there's also a pirate. We end up having the challenge be to put on the BFTUDS search, which is a pretty disgusting shirt. Sapphire puts it on after debating whether it's gay or not. Interesting. And yeah, one thing which I find interesting are these hosts. So the hosts are Sainsbury and Asda's respectively, to British supermarkets. I find really interesting their images, right? So we've seen this before. However, they are actually blurred out images. They're, I don't remember exactly what this effect is called like crystallizing, which is intriguing because it's a different way to do it. Because, of course, one of the issues with having just a plain JPEG as a character is that the background details can be sharp and therefore distract from the face. So by sort of blurring it out, it can make for a more distinctive face, which have the actual face detail of the object stand out a little bit more, which I think make for an interesting detail. However, I do believe looking at it, it depends on the image. Like the Sainsbury's, I think it works pretty well. For the Asda, it really doesn't. That mouth gets really hidden away because of the black of the bottom half of the image. So it kind of depends, because it'll generalize a bit more, but yeah, so I think it depends. But it's an interesting theoretical. It's an interesting theoretical to see, absolutely. And honestly, it might work with the right situations. It could be pretty solid. Episode 2 of BFTUDS is titled "The Part That Makes You Squeal." Go. Okay, I have no idea what I just watched, so I'm just gonna say something else instead. Alright, so one thing that I've discovered when talking about when I was looking at it, this is not a season 1. This is a problem that this is actually like a season 14 million. Which is an issue because, of course, usually I try to take a look at a full history. However, these shows do not have clearly defined seasons to them, in the sense where they're not like properly labeled, which means that I did not have this knowledge before watching it. So my bad, my bad. Should have known. What I'm going to do with this situation is, for the meantime, I'm going to take a look at these BFTUDS shows, and then next time that something in the proper... Next time, a non-BFTUDS, because this is a side season. So next time, the main season of the story uploads an episode, I'll see, because I happen to be usually extremely behind, so sometimes, very rarely, but sometimes I skip, take a look at the order of the previous seasons. However, really no promises. I mean, I don't know, but this is currently my plan. Take a look at this in isolation for now. It doesn't seem like there's lore I'm really missing out on in much of a way, and then we sort of, get it done later when the main show drops an episode, okay, after this, okay, so that's the plan. If it occurs I haven't talked about the episode at all, Emerald gets eliminated. Well, actually, first of all, freaking stratigraphy table, my favorite table, ends up getting eliminated, even despite not being in the show. Then Emerald gets eliminated. Challenge is to make dog noises. The few people in the VC are trying. There certainly are. It's not going great, but you go off, I guess. Yeah, no idea who's getting eliminated. We'll find out. Episode 3 is out of the 2016 Killer Clowns Grand Return. Here we go. Okay, never mind. That is the finale of BFTUDS. I mean, that doesn't change the plan we talked about last time, but yeah, that's the finale. So we end up getting so confused about the results of this elimination, we just end up YOLOing it and going, drugs, you win. This is a W for drugs. So we have good job, truly proud. This is what we need. And in general, that is the show. I mean, I feel like then what were these episodes recorded like at once? Was that what's going on? Because like that might be what's going on, but then the voting counts couldn't be accurate. But then what if they were? Because I feel like this is the type of thing where it's that if we only have 6 minutes of a show, it gives me vibe of show that's recorded all at the same time, right? However, like I don't know, it doesn't seem like it, but then the voting counts aren't accurate. It's like 5 billion or whatever it's called, right? So maybe it was recorded at the same time and the votes are a lie, right? I don't know. That feels like it could be correct. But then it's like, I don't know. If you're on the VC at the same time, we're on the VC for 7 minutes. Like, you can make more show than that. Come on now, lock in. We made like a 7-minute show now. Made a 7-minute show. I can make you an 8-minute one just in this section. Like, what is good? Come on now. But yeah, good job. The placements are all 40 other contestants are completely, I don't know why they're there, but hey, at least we cool. I like the ballpoint fella as placement on the stool, on the 6th place stool. I like that pose. I'm a fan of that pose. That pose, I might put that in the thumbnail type pose. But in general, that is BFTUDS. It's interesting. We haven't seen like a voice chat created show, so it's interesting to see how that might be, although this is entirely unserious, so it'll be more, so it's not a great example of it, and then it'll be intriguing to see. So yeah, when if you proper full season episodes of this franchise release, I will probably most likely take a look at it. My apologies for not knowing, but again, I really don't. I like. If I did miss important funny from the previous seasons of this thing, I really, really, really didn't notice because I. But, it might be there. Maybe, because, maybe Sainsbury's was secretly the ultimate villain in season 1. So then that means that now when he's hosting and being stupid, then that's extremely humorous now. Like that type of context. But, yeah, overall, that is BFTUDS. Good job on drugs for winning the ugly, disgusting Sainsbury's. Because of the drugs, it'll be keeping that title for the foreseeable future. Let's do an outro. Alright, and that will be all for today's episode of Object Catchup. We did everything I wanted to do today. That's cool. I'm still definitely really trying to sort of iron out how much behind the scenes, because I'm really trying to proper go like, alright, let's try to organize what I'm going to do in a day before I do it, is the main thing that I'm sort of changing behind the scenes, because it's like, I've noticed that, I'm not too fair in coverage when I'm taking a look at stuff, sort of YOLOing it. That causes for a few days to be so much shit, and then the next day I don't do anything, right? And then it ends up kind of being a problem. So having a proper list, like, okay, this is satisfactory levels, is kind of something that I'm getting there, but there's a lot of balancing that needs to do that because it's very difficult to predict how long I'm going to talk about something before I thought about it, before I even know what it is, especially for these request shows, which causes mistakes like this where I don't really know what BFTUDS is, but I put it on the list and I find out later, and as I was on the list and I've already looked at episode 1, and all this stuff's really culminating and shit. But yeah, again, if you've uploaded a recent episode and want me to take a look at it, if you're one of the previous cover show creators, I'm trying. There's so much bullshit releasing, not bullshit in the positive way, that there's so much stuff, man. It's so many things all of the time. We're getting there. We're getting there, okay? But it'll take a minute or a week. But yeah, for the shows that we watched today, except for this one, I guess, we're all caught up. See you next time. Goodbye.